It's time for sewing confessions, more specifically, serger confessions. Do you mainly use your serger for overcasting, raveling edges? If you're grimacing while admitting you don't take advantage of your serger, it's time to take a workshop. Pam Maschey, Baby Lock's ambassador, educational ambassador, is with us to present a serger workshop. Since most of us can't attend one of her hands-on classes, we decided to bring the workshop to you. Welcome back, Pam.
Thank you very much, Nancy. And do you remember the first time you took your serger out of the box?
I do. Intimidating.
It can be. And so today we're going to take the viewers through some basic stitches and make some very nice samples that they can put into a workshop booklet. The 4-thread overlock stitch is the most basic stitch. Plus, it can be creative. Seaming knits, chain stitch patchwork, and even serging wrapped corners are just a few of the workshop samples Nancy and I will detail during this first episode.
Serger Workshop, that's what's coming up next on Sewing with Nancy.
Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, is made possible by Baby Lock, a complete line of sewing, quilting, and embroidery machines and sergers. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Madeira, specializing in embroidery, quilting, and special effect threads, because creativity is never black and white. Koala Studios, fine sewing furniture custom built in America. Clover, makers of sewing, knitting, quilting, and embroidery products for over 25 years. Experience the Clover difference. Amazing Designs and Class A Needles.
Taking a serger workshop, the first thing the instructor will do is review the parts of the machine, the serger. So Pam is going to take us on a little journey through the different type of setups we may have from our traditional sewing machine.
Okay, very good. Well, of course, the first thing you'll notice are all the different threads that we have. And it's very important that we follow the owner's manual, get that out, not wait until something isn't working in order to get that, before you get that out. But let's follow our owner's manual and let's bring the thread through the telescoping thread guide. And it's important to follow through, and in certain cases, thread, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes, in a specific order. But we're going to bring our threads down and into the machine. And when the machine is threaded, we're going to look down inside the machine and see that you have the loopers. And let's just get in a little bit closer and look at how those loopers are working. You're going to have both an upper looper, which travels on top of the needle plate, and then you have the lower looper, which is going to be traveling below and keeping the fabric or the thread below the lower looper. You also have a cutting blade, and as we stitch, you'll notice that the fabric is going to be trimmed away as we stitch on that seam, removing the excess seam allowance. We also have a stitch width dial, and that's going to, of course, make the adjustment of the width, as wide and narrow as our stitches will be. And then we also have a stitch length dial that's on the serger as well.
And you have 2 needles.
Yes, we do. We have both a right and a left needle that we're going to be working with today, which will create the 4-thread stitch.
And the 4-thread stitch is the most basic, and we're starting at the very beginning. And here is a close-up of this, and you can see this is the way most sweatshirts, t-shirts are made. The seam is stitched, the edge is overcast and trimmed all in one motion, very effortless, perfect for knits. And if you're working with knits, put in stretch needles into your machine in both needles. Later on, we'll be working just with 1 needle. And then let's talk a little bit about thread, because you notice Pam had 4 cones of thread in her machine. A traditional all-purpose thread for your sewing machine has 3 plies, 3 lightweight filaments or yarns twisted together to make a strong thread. Well, because we have 4 of them, this thread is only 2-ply. It's much lighter weight, so it's a third less in weight. If you are going to be threading your machine, we have 2 options for you. And Pam, yours is the easiest.
This is very easy, Nancy. And today we're going to, it's an extraordinarily advanced threading system that we have. We're going to simply just place the thread into the threading ports. We'll just drop the thread down inside.
Now this is for the upper looper and lower looper.
Correct.
Not the needles.
Not the needles. The needles we are going to be threading in a traditional way. And we are going to engage the threading device, thread the loopers, and just simply with a push of a button, there we go. They're threaded.
They shoot right through.
They shoot right through.
Now, if you don't have that type of automatic system, the traditional way is to cut your existing thread. And when you get your machine out of the box, if you're a new serger owner, don't pull those threads out like I did many years ago. You can lose your religion doing that because, my goodness, to rethread it sometimes is difficult. And then tie on, just make a little loop, tie these two together, and clip off the excess thread tails. And I did that clipping already on, let me see, here we go. Here's that little knot. And let me clip this one. And if you are working manually like I am to rethread your machine, there's a certain sequence that you should follow, and also drop your scissors on the floor. And raise your presser foot so you disengage the blade and disengage the thread, and then pull it through so that they are separated. So the chain stitch is now unchained. There are 4 separate threads coming out in this manner. And then what I'm going to do is just pull the thread through. Starting with the upper looper, I'm just pulling this through, and then you can pull the lower looper and bring it through until you see the light blue thread coming through. And here we have 1, and there we have 2. So then after having both of those, then you do the needle thread. So just tie on is the way to do it. Upper looper, lower looper, then the needles.
Right.
Now basic stitching.
Okay, so the basic stitching. When you start stitching, it is important that, of course, you close up your machine because it's going to be trimming away the excess fabric. Our typical stitch length is going to be set at 2.5. Our stitch width, when we adjust this stitch dial, the stitches are actually formed inside the machine. So we have the stitch width adjustment that's made, and as we stitch, again, as we said, it's going to trim away the excess fabric. And typically when you're stitching on a 5/8 inch seam, it trims the excess fabric away. And you'll also find that it sews so much faster than your typical sewing machine, traditional sewing machine does. And here you have your basic 4-thread overlock and seam stitched. Now this is definitely a durable seam that you can use in a garment, as you said, on knits.
And that's knits, or you can also do it in wovens. Now, you didn't have to adjust any tensions because machines will differ, but your tensions are automatic.
These are automatic, and we could go from one fabric to another.
Now on other machines you will have tension dials or thread tension control dials, and Pam, you have a great statement for that. It's not really tension.
No, I call them thread control dials.
So on my machine you can see a close-up of the 4 dials that I have, and those 4 dials, there's a normal setting, and you can loosen or tighten, and we'll do that later on in the program to change that. Follow your owner's manual again, but because you're working with 4 different threads, you're going to have to sometimes adjust to do some of the creative effects. Now, seaming knits is not just the only thing that we can work with, but a lot of you are quilters, and I use my serger for quilting. Chain stitching pieces of fabric together, the small little samples we're working with. But Pam, why don't you tell our viewers, share with our viewers the stitch width and length.
Okay, the stitch width and length, we're going to leave the stitch length on 2.5. Our width, we are going to adjust to 5.5. Because quilters like that 1/4 inch seam, we don't really need to trim any excess fabric away. So here we're just going to skim the edge of our fabric, and we don't have to stop stitching in between each one of those little blocks of fabric either.
And basically you can just keep chaining and chaining together and press the seam allowances in one direction, and then if we made a little patch, 4 patch here, you can see this would be just as if you used a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. A little heavier seam, but very durable, and I like it for patchwork. Many years ago, I decided just to use my serger to sew a garment. Well, it wasn't easy when it came to turning a collar. So those of you who've watched Sewing with Nancy before know that we've used wrap corner techniques and 2 seams to get a perfectly turned corner. This isn't turned right side out, but Pam, you're going to show us how to do that.
Very simple. All we need to do is simply serge down one side. Then we will take the serged edge and we're just going to fold it down right against the stitching line.
So you wrap it so that the needle is right on the fold.
Right on the folded edge. And then we just simply serge down the other side. And again, our serger is going to go through all different types of weights and thicknesses. And we'll simply take the collar turner, the point turner, place that inside the point, press it down, turn it right side out, and there you have a perfect corner.
Another thing to do with your serger is some easing, and we have the ability 2 ways to let your machine ease in this with a differential feed, or you can do some basic gathering stitches or easing stitches. And Pam, share with us the differential feed feature on many sergers.
Yes, the differential feed gives you the ability to increase the amount of fabric that's either fed into your machine or held back. And today we're just going to ease in this corner edge as if we're going to be hemming a garment. So we just ease, and you can see that it's pulling in, and it just cups it and turns it right in.
And it's because when you tighten that differential feed, more fabric is bitten by the feed dogs, but it's eased in. So work with that dial on the side. If you don't have that feature, which is very possible, all you have to do is lengthen your stitch. And here's where I'm lengthening the stitch, and then serge the edge. Separate the threads and just pull the needle threads, and you have a very secure edge to ease, or you could possibly gather with that stitch. So a 4 thread lengthen stitch and pull the needle threads. These are the basics of a 4 thread overlock stitch. A serger workshop would not be complete without taking a few of the basic specialty serger feet on a test drive. The cording foot is one of the first feet that I added to my accessory box. Adding cording to a seam is a speedy process. Here's how. You just saw a close-up of this corded seam, and we're making small samples during this workshop, and you can do the same by following along, and in the workbook that accompanies this program you can make these same small samples and know how to do your settings when you're getting to a future project. Obviously you're going to make something larger than this when you really go through the process, but the foot is important, but most of all you need cording to start with, and the cording that we've chosen to use is cording wrapped with fusible web, so that you just can avoid the first step of serging or sewing, and that is to do the pressing. We've cut fabric about 1 1/4 inch, 1 3/8 wide, wrapped it around the fusible web, the cording, and you can see the wrong sides are meeting together. And then just with the tip of a small mini iron or the tip of your traditional iron, just guide along the edge, matching those edges. And maybe you can do a little straighter than I am, but you get the idea that this just presses into place. Now your cording foot is positioned so that there's a groove on the underside. And in that groove is where the fabric will be guiding. The fabric being the cording, I should say. And it just fits right in that groove, and it's fast to serge. And Pam, this is another 4 thread overlock stitch.
Yes, it is. And one little tip that I'd like to share is that I always extend my cording out of the seam just a little bit.
Making it longer.
Making it longer, because that way it makes it easier to insert into the foot. And as you notice, I have some pins. Very seldom do we use pins with our serger, but when we do, we want to make sure that we place them in parallel to our stitching. So let's just go ahead and stitch. It makes it very simple when you are stitching using the cording foot, because that groove again just helps guide the cording .
And I've done a lot of home decorating pillows with this technique, and it works out very well. Very neatly put into place. And there are also techniques on turning corners that you can very easily work with. Okay. Now, Pam's going to change to the elastic foot while I tell you about this, because our next treatment is to apply elastic around, let's say, activewear, sportswear, home decorating again, using that 4-thread overlock stitch. No changes yet in our settings. This is a unique looking foot with a screw top, and that top controls the elastic, the drag on the elastic, how tight it will be. There's one little pointer on the white knob, and then there are black lines. And you have to learn the adjustments yourself, but you can see 1 turn or 2 turns or 3 turns. The tighter the turns, or the more the turns, the tighter the elastic fits into place. And the elastic, you can see, goes into a channel. And Pam, you've just snapped off one foot, snapped on the other.
Snap the foot right on. And again, one little technique is I always insert the elastic into the foot prior to snapping it onto the machine. And again, when you are attaching elastic, it is important that we increase our stitch length to the maximum length, because as the elastic then is stitched on, it is going to stretch, and when it relaxes, we don't want to have the stitches bunching right on top of each other.
Too close together.
Correct.
This will take a little testing. It's not a guaranteed 1-to-1 ratio or 2-to-1 ratio, but you can easily find that with just a quick test drive, as I mentioned.
Exactly, and then just trim off the excess elastic, keep on stitching. There you go.
So with just a little bit of serger know-how, you too can have a workshop right at home. If you're one of the many who confess to only using a serger to overcast edges, now's your time to excel during this serger workshop. The 3-thread overlock stitch is raveling seam's best friend. Plus, that same stitch can become a decorative edge with a quick thread change. When we look at the little samples to make, this is just a traditional seam and an overcast edge. This is a wide 3-thread stitch. This is just an overcast edge with a narrow 3-thread stitch. And the difference between the two is which needle you're going to use. Instead of using 4 threads as we've been working with, we're down to 3. And I've removed the left needle to make the narrow stitch. Now here the needle's already removed, and make sure that when you remove a needle, here's the right screw, here's the left screw, that you tighten righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, the left needle position, so that screw does not pop out while you're serging. It's happened to me, I'm sure, Pam, it's happened to you. Now you can just serge the edges, and this is where you're not going to be trimming off anything. You know, this is a very, very simple edge finish, and honestly, I have used a 4th thread to finish edges, but you don't need that extra weight. So what a fine, beautiful edge finish. Simple as that. But then there's more. And Pam, you're going to show us how to make the 3-thread overlock stitch like a trim. A trim on an outer edge of a jacket, of a vest.
It's beautiful. And again, you, Nancy, use the right needle. I'm going to be using the left needle, which gives us a little bit added width to our decorative thread. And decorative threads come in such a wide variety that you really want that edge, as you said, to stand out and be much more decorative.
And we have a weight, about a 6-weight thread, and it's beautiful just in the upper looper.
Yes, today we're just using it in the upper looper, and it does use quite a bit more thread than what your needles are going to use. So always start with a fresh spool of thread. So let's just simply set our stitch length and also our stitch width, depending upon the weight of the thread that you're going to be working with. And today I'm just simply going to serge that edge. Again, just trimming away a scant amount, or you could just simply serge off your full seam allowance as well. But again, you have a very beautiful edge, very simply done.
About 2 years ago, I interviewed the founder of Little Dresses for Africa during a Nancy's Corner segment. The response to her request for us to sew little dresses was overwhelming. We thank you for your donations. Many of you also emailed asking how to do the same for children in our country. Tender Loving Care Ministries was one of the organizations that came to the forefront, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to clothe poverty-stricken children of the Appalachian areas. To tell her story about TLC Ministries, I'd like to welcome Carol Franceschi, founder and director of TLC. Carol, you have a wonderful story to tell, and this isn't a news story.
No, it isn't.
You've been sewing dresses and outfits for little boys and girls for years.
Yes.
About how many years ago now has it been?
Well, July next month will begin our 25th year of service to the children.
And you started with dresses, and now has it expanded to working with little boys too?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, we had to add the little boys. They like new clothing too.
Sure. Now, you mentioned that part of the Appalachian area is very poverty-stricken. And you send 4 times a year outfits that people make send to you, and this is one example.
Yes, it is. A little jumper and a blouse. This will be for our back-to-school mailing coming up shortly. And then we have 3 other mailings. We do Thanksgiving and Christmas, because not the same children receive twice.
Sure.
And then we do the Easter mailing as well.
And each time that you do a mailing, you know, sometimes I think of mailing, I think of getting something in the mail. Paper. It's not paper at all. It's a package, right?
Yes, that's right. Each garment is sized, according to the what size, and then we add the slip, and we add the underwear, we add tights, or socks. We add, for the girls, we add a little hair bow, bracelet, little pocketbook, and the little biblical story as well for all of the children.
The whole package that they
Yes.
get, nothing's missing. And then here's a little guy's outfit. You'd mentioned that someone made the shirt, but they purchased the rest so that it's all, they have something new.
Exactly.
Completely new to wear.
Exactly.
And you have a whole network of stitchers and sewists and seamstresses around the country.
Yes, we do.
Now, your first introduction to get the word out came in a magazine.
Yes, yes. And back in 1993, we had an article in Family Circle magazine, and that really put us on the map. And we had over 10,000 responses to that article. And out of that, we developed our mailing list and our volunteers and contributors.
Sure. The nice thing about this this garment sewing program is that you can make any pattern.
That's correct.
You don't have to use a specific jumper or a specific sundress, but it can be any style the creator wants to make.
Absolutely, because we don't want 100 dresses all the same. We would prefer that
Sure.
they be individually. Although we have used the same pattern for for all these years, because children's clothing does not change that much.
Sure. Now the size range that you have, you'll have it on your website.
Yes.
And the size range isn't totally expansive. It has some limited sizing.
We start with size 4 because we wanted to target preschool and kindergarten.
Okay.
And we target 1st and 2nd grade. We do size 4 to 14 for girls and boys.
Sure. But that, I shouldn't have said limited. That's not very limited.
No,
that's
not
quite,
really.
That's quite expansive. And then you buy little Mary Jane shoes for the girls, matching socks.
Yes.
If it's a dress, a slip goes with it, undies.
Undies.
And then you even make sometimes purses and bracelets.
Yes, we have little crocheted pocketbooks,
Sure.
and we have little bracelets.
Oh, just all the fun things.
And we've got the hair bow here.
Oh, my.
Yes. And then, of course, we have the slips that we make for little girls as well.
Well, they have a complete outfit. And, a lot of us who sew, I didn't have any little girls. I have a granddaughter, but I don't have a little girl. I didn't have little girls to sew for. So now, if you ever wanted to make a little girl's outfit, little boy's outfit too, you could help people in our country as well as sending your sewing to other places of the world. But I think this is such a worthy cause and a great way for us to use some of our techniques. Carol, thank you for being with us. I appreciate it greatly.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is super.
And thank you for joining us on Sewing with Nancy and Nancy's Corner. You can find all things Sewing with Nancy, including information about TLC, by going to our website at nancyzieman.com. When you click on Nancy's Corner under the 25 series, you'll look and you'll find information on TLC. And then also you can watch current Sewing with Nancy programs on that site, nancyzieman.com, read my blog, and find out all information. I'd like to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Nancy and Pam's fully illustrated Serger Workshop workbook includes laminated instructions for all the techniques featured in this 3-part series. It's $19.99 plus shipping and handling. To order the workbook, call 800-336-8373 or visit our website at sewingwithnancy.com/2514. Order item number BK2514. Serger Workshop. Credit card orders only. To pay by check or money order, call the number on the screen for details. Visit Nancy's website at nancyzieman.com to see additional episodes, Nancy's blog, and more. Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, has been brought to you by Baby Lock, Madeira Threads, Koala Studios, Clover, Amazing Designs, and Class A Needles. Closed captioning funding provided by Rowenta. Sewing with Nancy is a co-production of Nancy Zieman Productions and Wisconsin Public Television.